Good afternoon. Today is the Mid-Autumn Festival. I wish you all a happy Mid-Autumn Festival. A happy family and a happy life. It's time and we have a quorum. I call the meeting to order. Item 1 on the agenda, information paper issued since the last meeting. The Secretariat received one set of paper after the last meeting and it's been set out on the agenda. Item 2 on the agenda, briefing by the Secretary for Housing on the Chief Executive's 2025 Policy Address. Let us first welcome the Secretary for Housing and the relevant government officials for attending the meeting. Welcome. We have with us Ms. Winnie Ho, Secretary for Housing, Ms. Charmaine Lee, Permanent Secretary for Housing, Ms. Estrella Chung, Deputy Secretary for Housing, and Mr. Daniel Leung, Deputy Director of Housing of the Housing Department, Mr. Michael Hong, Deputy Director of Housing, Ms. Winnie Wong, Deputy Secretary for Housing, as well as Ms. Sherry Yeung, Assistant Director of the Housing Department. Welcome. The Secretary for Housing will give us a PowerPoint presentation on housing-related initiatives in the Chief Executive's 2025 Policy Address. Secretary, over to you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. May I wish you all happy Mid-Autumn Festival. We're glad to be here to brief members of the panel on housing regarding the housing-related initiatives in the policy address. Let me first go over our last year's progress. We have completely turned around the problem of backloaded public housing supply. Our target was 308,000 units in the coming 10 years. Now we already have 169,000 in the pipeline. Given our target of 294,000 units, we have already made significant progress. We have achieved 60% of our goal. I thank the Legislative Council for approving the building of 30,000 light public housing. We have seen a flat intake of 4,400. The composite waiting time been dropped from the peak of 6.1 years to 5.1 years. By moving into public rental housing or light public housing units 1 year earlier, SDU households can save around $36,000 or $50,000 of rent on average per year, respectively. So, on average, they can save about $200,000. The light public housing is built using modular integrated construction approach. Choi Hing Road, a 18-story tall building, was completed in less than 1 year and a half. Some mothers were able to put their children through tuition classes after living in the light public housing in Choi Hing Road projects in the summer holiday. We are gradually adjusting the ratio between PRH and SSF to 6:4. We know that many people want to purchase an SSF. We are allotting, therefore, an extra ballot number to those who have failed to purchase an SSF in the last 2 cell exercise and young family applicants as well as one-person applicants. We are increasing the number of white farm secondary market quota by 1,500. We are tightening up the well-off tenants policies by raising the additional rent and lowering the income limits for well-off tenants so that public resources are appropriately allocated to applicants in need. We also focus on application of technology. We're working with NAMI and many different partners, say, for example, local universities, in developing new technology to speed up the fabrication of MIC units. We are also making use of BIM systems to promote the usage of robotics to make our construction site more efficient and safe. Estate management. We are now rolling out many strategies. We are using robots and e-patrol devices. We are also making use of artificial intelligence to analyze images to detect irregularities and identify incidents such as objects throwing from height. We are also equipping our frontline officers with mobile application systems for daily patrol. Well-being Startup Program. It was launched by the Housing Society. Some entrepreneurs signed a 3-year tenancy agreements with us. In the first year, they pay 25% of the rent, second year 50%, third year 70% of the market rent. As you can see, more than 60 shops participated in the 2.0 program. They provided 60 pop-up stores and shops to us under the program. As you can see on my Facebook, there are many new products developed by these entrepreneurs under the program. Another initiative of the policy address is to increase the public housing supply and improve the housing ladder. As we build more public rental housing, light public housing, so on and so forth, we can provide more people who have home ownership aspiration to purchase a flat. As I said, we will reach 889,000 units in the coming 5 years, about 80% higher than that of the 5-year period when the government took office. With a housing production of more than 30,000 units per year on average, we're moving further closer to the target, reducing the waiting time for subsidized rental housing to 4.5 years in 2026-27. By the end of 2025, we are going to have an additional 5,000 units. So in 2025, about 10,000 light public housing units will be completed. In 2026, 20,000. To assist more PRH tenants to become owners, we are adjusting the ratio of quotas between green farm and white farm from 40-60 to 50-50. For the WSM exercise, we will increase the quota by 1,000 to 7,000. Half of them will be allocated to young family and one-person applicants below 40 years old. As some applicants may have already purchased an SSF or a house in the private sector. They account for about 15% of the applicants. Their quotas may go to waste. That's why we are increasing the number of approval letters to be issued. We are expanding and increasing the ratio of larger units in HOS and GSH projects in response to market needs. We will enlarge the flats, and we will also relax the alienation restriction period of new SSF for sale in open market from 15 years to 10 years. For owners who have owned their flat SSF for 10 years or more, they can let their flats with an unpaid premium after paying relevant fees subject to a quota of 3,000. We are also launching the Flat for a Flat scheme for elderly owners. For those who have reached the age of 60 and own their flat for 10 years or more, they can sell their own unit without paying premium to purchase a smaller flat or a flat in a more remote area. So what does remote area mean? It means outlying island, extended urban area, and so on and so forth. We also want to further enhance the cost effectiveness of public housing construction. The Housing Department will set up the Project Facilitation Office. The Secretary and Undersecretary of the Housing Bureau work on the policies, but the Housing Director will adopt the facilitator and enabler mindset and implement this joint approval approach to streamline the completion of projects. We will implement the new management approach under which the target time for project completion is set to prompt the completion of various project stages. Regarding the approval of building materials, we will look into the accreditation of standards of more regions. We will pilot the batch procurement of modules for MIC and make good use of standard building material database created for contractors, covering mainly materials such as aluminum, windows, partition walls to expedite approval process. We have innovated the BIM-enabled system approach to foundation design. Hopefully, we can save $1 million for each site. This system can automatically generate foundation designs to achieve cost savings. We will continue to promote the use of robotics and analytics platform. Basic housing units. We used to promote PRH and light public housing only. Now, there's room for us to work on subdivided units. Thanks to the LESHCO, the Basic Housing Units Bill was passed on the 26th of September 2025. The ordinance was gazetted on the 3rd of October and will come into effect on the 1st of March next year. We're working on the website. Redevelopment. We have not forgotten it, despite the large number of projects we have. We're now working on Wafu Estate. At the same time, the Housing Bureau and the department is also still looking into redeveloping some existing estates. This year, we will conduct a study on the redevelopment of model housing estate. Is of 71 years old, is the oldest estate currently in Hong Kong. It's located in North Point. That's all for my presentation. As this is the last meeting of the panel on housing of this term of the Legislative Council, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the members for giving us so many pragmatic and invaluable suggestions. You've reminded us how we can do better. Every year, when we prepare for the policy address, we collected your views and suggestions. We always try to incorporate them. I hope that regardless of the roles you will take up in the future, you will continue to support us. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary.
跟住落嚟咧。
Thank you. I now open the floor for members to ask questions. Let me read out the order in which members are going to speak. First member, Mr. Kwok Wai Keung, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, Mr. Kitson Yang, Dr. Wendy Hong, Mr. Chen Hock Fong, Mr. Andrew Lam, Mr. Scott Leung, Dr. Ben Chen, Mr. Kenneth Leung, Dr. So Chang Wing, Mr. Edward Lau, Mr. Tong Li Tse, Ms. Doreen Kong, and myself. I'll give each member 4 minutes to ask questions. Questions and answers included 4 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Kwok, thank you. I'm happy to be the first one to speak. We are now facing the situation of backloaded. I mean, when the current term government took office, there was a situation of being backloaded. The central waiting time was at the peak of 6 years. It's been dropping right now. I'm glad to see this. I'm grateful to the administration. Apart from a stable supply of public housing, the basic housing units plan has also helped a lot of people to move away from substandard subdivided units. I'm glad to see this. I have to commend the administration. Now, the elderly can buy a new flat without having to pay land premium. And I can see that the administration also wants to revitalize the second-hand market. The direction is correct. However, despite enhancements to the WSM, to younger families, for them to get married and to have children, this is actually a great restriction. In fact, a lot of families want to get an HOS flat, get married, and then give birth to children, but then they may not succeed for 8 attempts or even 10 attempts. That's why the FTU has been advocating a saving scheme for young people. We want to help young people to save money first, then they can plan for the future, which means they can plan for building a family together, having children, and so on. Is it time for us to consider having this scheme? We do want to have future generations, and we want to help our young people as far as possible. It's not just about the housing policies. It's also about the population policy as well as the childbirth policy. All these complement one another. If young people have a unit, have a home, then they will have more incentive to give birth to babies. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Kwok, for your comments. Some families failed for a number of attempts when they want to have an HOS flat. We have noticed a drop in the oversubscription ratio. Recently, the figure stands at about 13 to 14, but it was once as high as 30 or even 60. Actually, this figure points to disappointment. When the figure is lower, the less disappointed the public are. In the coming 5 years, the HS and the HA will have a total of 58,000 subsidized housing units. This is a stable and consistent supply of housing. This will also help young people who want to buy their own homes. By way of balloting, we have assigned an extra ballot for young people. For a saving scheme for young people, Hong Kong is a very advanced city when it comes to finance. There is a wide range of saving schemes. Is it necessary to implement a scheme that is tied to housing? Well, usually we promote the upward mobility for young people. Many young families want to make more savings, but then some young families also want to develop their careers first. Mr. Kwok, thank you, Secretary. I understand the arrangements implemented by the Bureau, but some young families do face this situation, that is, they fail even after a number of attempts. Well, we have already assigned an extra ballot number to younger families, and I believe this will help them. Thank you. Dr. Low, thank you. On the 2nd of October, last Thursday, this panel went to Ngau Tau Kok to visit the basic housing unit on Choi Heng Road. The secretary and chairman also visited the site. We were very satisfied with the site on Choi Heng Road. There are amenities and shopping malls near the light public housing. For lighting, ventilation, these aspects are actually quite good. I'm not sure what tenants will think, but if I were a tenant, I would prefer continuing to live in these light public housing units. That is because these units are close to where they study and work. So, of course, they will probably prefer continuing to live in the light public housing unit. I believe the tenants will stay there for quite a while, and this will help them improve the living conditions immediately. For children, we visited a family. That child had quite a good study in the unit. There's a bunk bed, and the child studies inside the study. That is quite a good layout. The LegCo approved quite a large sum of money on the light public housing project, and I have to commend the administration's efforts. I'm a representative of the engineering sector, where definitely we can use the MIC approach to construct a building of a dozen floors. There is no worry in this regard. It is definitely technically feasible. I'd like to point out a technical issue. It may not be directly related to the agenda item today, but it is actually quite a hot topic in Hong Kong. Recently, in a light public housing construction site, an issue was reported. The ASD, in a press release of the government, said that it is not a standalone incident. There is indeed an issue in relation to the quality of works. As for MIC, there are some technical issues identified. Say the holes don't really match. It is not a difficult issue to tackle. When there is an improved method, you can indeed solve the problem. Otherwise, probably this will lead to a disaster. So I'd like to hear from the Secretary, how are you going to assure the quality of the construction works? And I have to declare I am a member of the Housing Society. Well, I mean the Housing Authority. Thank you. Secretary, on enhancing supervision. Well, thank you. I thank the panel for visiting the Choi Heng Road Light Public Housing construction site. All of us are confident about the quality of MIC. Within a year and a half, housing was already made possible to tenants. The ASD issued a press release today. It mentioned a subcontractor which is responsible for 3 sites. The 3 sites at Yampo Road, Shangon Street. It is an issue in relation to holes. The holes were expanded. However, for these works to be conducted, actually it requires the approval of the ASD. When we identify the issue of construction bolts cut, they will have to seek approval, and the ASD does conduct inspections on their own initiative. For this problem, the ASD will seriously follow up on it with subcontractors. But of course, the costs will be borne by the contractor concerned. We will ensure quality of the construction works before they are given back to the housing department. There's a task force to study the issue, and we will see if we need to hold any personnel accountable. But I believe this won't affect confidence of the public in public housing. Please observe the time limit, 4 minutes each. Thank you. Mr. Kitson Yang. Thank you. Well, I have been lobbying the government to allow the elderly to sell their flats and to buy their new flats. I'm glad to see that the administration has implemented the Flat for Flat scheme for elderly owners. But in the document, it just touches upon the flats under the housing authority. But will it be extended to the housing authority? This is actually a very good policy, so we should extend it to cover the housing authority as well. If you only cover the flats under the housing society, it's not as good. I hope that it will be covered for the housing authority as well. Thank you. That is my first question, and I'd like to talk about the TPS as well. That is the Tenants Purchase Scheme. I agree with the Secretary that we need to conduct more studies before we implement the scheme, but I'd like to make it a point that this is indeed a call from society. Members of the public have high hopes for the TPS. I hope that you will implement TPS 2.0 as soon as possible. Next, I'd like to talk about redevelopment. You are studying the redevelopment of a total of 11 estates. For older housing estates, if you conduct studies later, then there will only be more older housing estates. Take Oimen Estate, for example. We have been discussing it for 5 decades. Fushan Estate, these are very old housing estates as well. If you conduct studies now, when you implement the scheme, then the housing estates will be 60 years old. So it is high time you conducted studies. Thank you. For the Flat for Flat scheme for elderly owners, yes, indeed there is an arrangement for flats under the housing authority, but at present the arrangement is for larger flats to smaller flats. We're going to also allow cross districts, which means you only need to move from one district to another. There is no restriction in relation to the size of the flats. Regarding the TPS, I have to acknowledge that the TPS does have its own advantages. For members of the public living in public rental housing, of course, they want to see the launch of the TPS 2.0, but we need to take a macro perspective. Some people ask how we should handle public assets, and we need to tread very cautiously when it comes to the implementation of the scheme. 1, how to set the price, and 2, on the technical aspect, how can we better manage the scheme? How can we improve the 1.0 TPS? Even if we're going to implement the TPS 2.0, we will just select a handful of housing estates. So these warrant our consultation and studies. We're going to kickstart the studies in 2026, and we will explain the findings and the discussion results to members. On redevelopment, I agree, and I oftentimes discuss it with my colleagues how we can redevelop some estates. And we need to think about reprovisioning. The larger the construction sites, the shorter the construction works will be. It could be a difference of 7 years. If we only limit ourselves to a walking distance of 15 minutes or 20 minutes, it is difficult for us to look for a suitable site in the urban area. If we can accept a longer distance, probably we can cast our net wider and we're going to have more choices. Thank you.
局長，
Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you. I thank you for abandoning the tenant purchase scheme. I'm not against it, but I don't think we have the conditions for it. Apart from price and management, there are many more reasons for why we should abandon this scheme. I don't want this to become a route for people to go for public housing instead of private residential properties. As 85% of new subsidized sale flats are already reserved for public housing, there are many opportunities for PRH tenants to get hold of a flat. And if you roll out the tenants purchase scheme, more and more people will try to queue for public rental housing. I think that this scheme will result in double benefits. The administration has been trying to build as many public rental housing units as possible to shorten the waiting time. If you roll out the TPS, then that will undermine the turnover of public rental housing, and that's self-contradictory. So I thank the administration for suspending the launching of TPS. Over the past 10 years, well, the home ownership ratio has been dropped from 54% to 50% in 2024. The same ratio in Singapore is 90%, Singapore, Beijing, 89 to 90%. For most advanced economy, the home ownership ratio is usually at 69 to 70%. Given our aging population, there will be more and more elderly people without a home, and their only way out is public rental housing units. There's an increase of 55% of elderly singleton on the waiting list for public rental housing. I don't think that the next generation can shoulder such a huge cost. So I think that the administration should set a target. In the 1998 long-term housing strategy, the ratio was set as 70%. I think that we should set the target as, for example, 55 to 60%, or any other figures in terms of home ownership percentage. If we have a target, then we can promote upward mobility of people along the housing ladder, and that will also promote social stability. Thank you. We are not suspending the tenants purchase scheme. We recognize the merit of this scheme, and we will continue to consult the public. Timing is essential. We have to not only consider the timing, but also the scale of when we roll out the scheme. The home ownership percentage in Hong Kong stands at about 50% actually. As our waiting time for public rental housing units drop, we are now adjusting the PRH to SSF ratio to 70-30, from 70-30 to 60-40. We'll continue to listen to the views of the people and monitor the housing supply situation. We may roll out the tenant purchase scheme in the future so that people can own their flats. Thank you. Next to speak, Mr. Shang Haofeng. Thank you. I think that the direction of this year's policy address is correct. It seems now we're no longer working on just improving people's living condition. Now we're working on improving the upward mobility of the people. We try to fulfill the home ownership aspirations of our citizens. As we're not, well, the AB has been advocating for the TPS. I know that some parties don't support the scheme, and I understand the reasons why, but the fact is many people want to see this scheme relaunched. The DAB thinks that the TPS is the right thing to do. The other member said just now that the home ownership percentage in Hong Kong is low. I think that with the TPS, we can increase or boost the ratio. We want to help now under our housing policy, PRH tenants save money so that they can purchase a flat in the private property market. We have 850,000 PRH units. In the future, we may have over 1 million PRH units. We cannot rely on SSF alone to boost the turnover. If we have the TPS, then tenants who have saved up a certain amount of money, they can purchase their own flats so that we can turn our public housing policies into one that is, say, rent first, buy later. I know that there are diverse views in the community. I'm willing to work with the secretary to address any concerns that people have so that we can actually launch this tenants purchase scheme. Many PRH tenants want the administration to trial this scheme in some estates first. So I wonder what plan the secretary has. They said that they will start studying it starting from 2026. Is there a timetable? Is there a workflow in the pipeline? Well, there's a piece of news today on the problems of MIC in the public housing. How do we monitor the on-site assembly of MIC modules? So that we will not turn something good into something that is bad for the people. So how will the administration review the assembly process to make sure that the MIC is as effective? Thank you. Secretary, I will ask the Deputy Secretary, Ms. Chen, to elaborate on the TPS study. MIC module has to be assembled on-site. Monitoring is therefore essential. The HSD has a mechanism in place. That's why we have the successful Yau Pok Road, Choi Hing Road projects. For non-LPH projects, the HSD has been adopting the same mechanism. The reason why we detected the construction bolts cut was because of the system of the HSD. The director established an independent investigation panel to look into this incident. The panel will review the existing system to see how we can make sure that there will not be similar irregularities again in the future. We will strive to make sure that the remedies can be put in place in a timely manner. The panel will support a report to the Housing Bureau very soon. If it has to do with the construction site monitoring system, then the report will be passed on to the Development Bureau. My apologies. Ms. Chung has something to add. Thank you. We will conduct a study on TPS in 2026. We will conduct internal study. We will listen to people's views on the scheme. Apart from that, we will work with research companies. We may issue questionnaires to collect views from public rental housing tenants and other stakeholders, such as people who have purchased SSSF or Green Farm HOS or those on the waiting list for PRH units. This is what we will work on next year. Thank you. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chairman. I think that every terms of the government has been trying to work on the housing issues. It seems that we have achieved a breakthrough in this term of the government. We have shortened the waiting time for PRH units significantly. It's been dropped from 6.1 to 5.1 years. It's no easy task. According to the demand projections in the long-term housing strategy, it is said that the demand will drop from 20,000 units. This is a projection only. I hope that this will not be an excuse for the government to stop building new public rental housing. In reality, I fully understand that given the difficult fiscal position of the government, the housing department may have to put some projects on hold. I thank the administration for listening to us. They have been adjusting the ratio between PRH and SSF, and they've been promoting turnover of public rental housing units. I appreciate the government's efforts in taking things a step at a time. But I hope that the administration, or rather the secretary, will give us a vision. So, do we have a target in terms of home ownership? We've been discussing issues of home ownership among young people, but what about elderly? The housing society has built their own brand. I wonder if we can have more policies to offer service accommodations for the elderly. It seems that we have not looked into this issue seriously. Thank you.
Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Andrew Lam, for your encouragement. Our figures in relation to the long-term housing strategy, changes in relation to the local demographic structure. We have different projections, say for the number of single people in society and for married people in society. In the past 10 years, we have collected quite a lot of figures. We have our own projections, but we also have figures in reality. This explains why there are more changes in relation to redevelopment, and that is exactly how we arrived at a figure of 294,000. The goal of the CWT of 4.5 years remains unchanged. We'll continue to work towards this goal. In relation to the TPS, as Dr. Wendy Hong mentioned, we continue to work towards this direction. If the community shares the same vision, with the policy address advocating upward mobility and an enriched housing ladder with social support, we'll definitely continue to study this issue in the next policy address. We'll see how we can promote social development in this regard. Thank you. Next member, Mr. Scott Lang. Thank you, Chairman. In the past few years, the government has been improving the living conditions for grassroots in society. We can see the results of the administration. This is worth our commendation. The government has finished this part, and now we're moving to enrich the housing ladder and to promote upward mobility. That has to do with improving the well-being of people in Hong Kong. This is a clear direction, and it is worth our support. We have read the LTHS report, that is the long-term housing strategy report. There's a drop in the projections, and I go along with Mr. Andrew Lam. Despite a smaller number of units, the pace of the development shouldn't change. We already have the land ready. When there's a change in the projections, there's room for us to make some changes in relation to our housing policies. Say, we can probably construct more larger units. As mentioned in the policy address, it touches upon larger units as well. And there will also be room for us to implement redevelopment. There's the mention of redeveloped estates in the policy address. The demand for public housing dropped from 308,000 to 294,000. The drop isn't significant, but is it suitable for us to implement a rolling period of 5 years for public housing redevelopment? Can it be extended to 10 years? As the Secretary mentioned just now, redevelopment requires reprovisioning resources. If we have a longer rolling period, then we can make it happen. Now the walking distance is about 15 minutes. Probably in the future, we can make it in the same district. Say for Shakimei Estate, it is a typical example. We need to make good use of the reprovisioning resources in the vicinity in order to implement public rental housing redevelopment. I look forward to measures to be implemented in the future. Thank you. Regarding the flat-for-flat scheme for elderly owners, I agree that the scheme should be extended from the units under the Housing Society to those under the Housing Authority. I look forward to enhancements. I hope matching services will be provided. Say for the elderly people, they want to change from a larger flat to a smaller flat, but for younger families, they may want to move from a smaller flat to a larger one. Is there any measure to increase the likelihood of success? In 1998, there is a 10-year public housing construction period, and actually the TPS is what a lot of people in the community want. Just now, the Deputy Secretary mentioned further studies in the future, and I do have high hopes for it. Thank you. Well, Secretary, please be brief, and probably you can take the questions that you haven't answered before. Thank you. I thank Mr. Leung for referring to some measures. Well, for GSH flats, we will be providing larger flats. In the past, there were 20% of two-room units. Now the figure will has already gone up to a higher figure, that is 25 to 28%. If possible, we'll move towards this direction. Regarding redevelopment, as we announced last year, Saiwan Estate and Matawai Estate were already announced to be redeveloped, and we're going to focus on these two estates. Every term of the government looks for suitable individual estates for redevelopment studies. Thank you. Next member, Dr. Ban Chen. Thank you, Chairman. We can see the efforts of the current term government, especially on the supply of public housing. We can see the efforts of the administration and we can see the results as well. We have seen an improvement in the waiting register. It is time we focused on the future. Some members of the public don't want to be given flats that are far away from the urban area. For public rental housing, there may be supply in Tongcheng or the Northern Metropolis, but these may not be the top priority choices for members of the public. With more housing supply, can we review the size of the flats? We need to enhance the appeal of these flats so that more members of the public will be willing to move into these NDAs. Then in these areas there will be sufficient tenants. We don't want only elderly people living in an area. We want younger families as well. My next question is that I hope that the government will review the impact of housing policies on the structure of families. For public rental housing, we have the well-off tenants policy, which has just now changed. When there are younger people living in a public rental housing unit, of course the income is increased as a whole. But then tenants don't want to pay a higher rent. What is the result? Only elderly people will remain in these units. And in the end, only elderly people live in these units. There will be elderly doubletons. And this is not a situation we want to see. I hope that the government is mindful of this. The solution is actually platitudinous. That is, we need to implement the TPS. We want to allow the whole family to live together in one single unit. We want the family structure to return to a healthy level. Will the launch of the TPS make the wait longer? Well, no. For private housing, the circulation rate is 7.6%. For public housing, the rate is only 0.8%. In other words, for every 100 units, only one can be circulated. The circulation rate is on the low side. So should we implement the TPS to allow more people in the community to own their own home? The government is at present under significant financial pressure. When one is living in, when we have public housing resources, you cannot really cash out these resources. If members of the public can buy these public rental housing units, then the government will have more revenue. Then the government will have more financial resources to implement other policies. We do need to consider the positive impacts and the merits of the TPS on Hong Kong. Thank you. Members have mentioned the TPS for a few times. Let's see if the Secretary has anything to say regarding other points. Thank you. Well, the supply of housing will be concentrated in the Northern Metropolis and Tongcheng. The vision of the Northern Metropolis is actually very good. If people can move in to the Northern Metropolis earlier, the development is actually very great. Some people say that you get to enjoy the best part of the Northern Metropolis earlier. That's why I'm very optimistic about the supporting facilities in utilities in the North Metropolis. Well, I think definitely you should be very happy if you are given a unit in the North Metropolis. On family structures, even if you aren't one of the tenants in the public housing unit, you should also visit your family members, especially the elderly. Not all of us necessarily live with our parents, but we can always visit our parents at weekends. We can take them out for dinner and so on. This is what we need to do. After all, our society is aging. A decade ago, the ratio of elderly people stood at 530,000, but today the figure has gone up to 730,000. And I hope that we can implement smart estate management by way of technologies. Just now, Dr. Ben Chen talked about cashing out the public rental housing resources. However, if we turn them into resources in the private sector, they will be gone. There will no longer be any public resources. That's why we have to tread very cautiously. Thank you. Next member, Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you, Chairman. As many members have already said, we can all see the results of the housing policies of the Housing Bureau. Last week, we went to visit the light public housing site. The Housing Bureau works very swiftly. We have different schemes, such as the Well-being Startup Program and the Families with Newborns Allocation Priority and Flat Selection Priority Scheme. I have some questions. In paragraph 10 of the papers, it refers to two schemes, that is Families with Newborns Allocation Priority Scheme and the Flat Selection Priority Scheme. For families with newborns, there is a need for them to move into a larger flat. Well, if there is a flat-for-flat scheme for elderly owners, for those living in subsidized housing with a newborn or with more family members, is it possible to consider launching a similar measure? This will further boost the fertility rate in Hong Kong. Next, in relation to the Well-being Startup Program from 1.0 to 2.0, a lot of companies in the business sector have taken part in the scheme. This is actually a good example of collaboration among the community, the commercial sector, and the government. Is it possible to provide rent concessions in order to encourage more companies to take part in it? Is it possible to launch IP so that these will encourage young people to take part in the scheme? Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Kenneth Leung, for your encouragement. Just now you talked about moving into a larger flat for families with newborns. Thank you for your proposal. We'll definitely study this when we have conditions in the future. Just now you talked about the Well-being Startup Program. We have to thank the business sector. A total of 50-odd shops are given to young people. There were a total of 16 companies in the commercial sector. Initially, we only had 10 shops offered by the Housing Society. Well, actually, when young people take part in this program, we can achieve a win-win situation. Young people nowadays are very creative. They have good ideas. One of the shops sells flashcards. In the first month of operation, there was already a business receipt of over $200,000. None of us could have imagined the positive response about flashcards. This attracted a lot of footfall to the shopping mall. We couldn't have imagined flashcards could lead to such a significant business receipts. No one could have imagined that flashcards could attract a lot of people to come together. So I hope that the commercial sector will make good use of this opportunity. Well, if you want to give us your vacant premises, vacant shops, we welcome. We can see a win-win situation. Thank you.
蘇長榮議員。
Dr. So Chang-wing. Thank you. I'm glad to see new and improved housing policy in the 2025 policy address. Over the past few years, the Housing Bureau has made great progress. So I commend Ms. Winnie Ho, the Secretary, and your team. I support enriching our housing ladder. I think that the government's housing policies should be one that care for our community, vitalize market turnover, instead of tilting towards any area. I have a few questions. The administration said that the ratio between green farm and white farm will be adjusted from 40-60 to 50-50. And the Housing Bureau will increase the supply of SSF to make sure that there is abundant opportunities for white farm applicants as well. But people are of the impression that opportunities that used to be allocated for white farm applicants are now reallocated to green farm applicants. White farm applicants are of the view that they now have fewer opportunities to secure a subsidized sale flat. These white farm applicants don't enjoy any other form of housing benefits. This HOS is their only opportunity to own a home. So how will the administration explain to them that the new ratio will not undermine their opportunities? Second, I'd like to ask about the flat for flat scheme for elderly owners. I think that this is similar to the 2018 flat for flat scheme, but that scheme was not that popular back then. The homes where elderly live in are not just a place of abode. It's where it has to do with where they go to seek medical help, where their community is. So I think that the incentives under the flat for flat scheme for elderly owners is not enough. The scheme will not now just cover the housing society flats, but also the HA units. How is this scheme different from the one 10 years ago? Will there be any measures to address the other concerns of the elderly owners? Secretary, I thank Dr. So for his great encouragement. The RHSD team under the LPH, along with my other team members behind me, next to me, are the ones to be thanked for our progress. Now, you talked about the adjustment of ratio between green farm and white farm to 50-50 from 40-60. the total supply of public housing and SSF has increased. So the opportunities of home ownership for both Green Farm and White Farm have significantly improved. For White Farm, they now have an additional 25% to secure a flat. For Green Farm applicants, after purchasing a SSF, they will vacate their PRH units. So there are two benefits to one act. That's why we think that we should further encourage Green Farm applicants to purchase a flat under the home ownership scheme. There are not that many flats under the housing society. That's why we want to also include housing authority units under the Flat for Flat scheme. We allow we allow the elderly owners not just to purchase a smaller flat in order to get cash incentives. As long as they move to a more remote areas, we will also give them compensation to cover their living expenses. We will continue to step up promotion and publicity, targeting these 100,000 elderly tenants or owners, rather. We will offer them seminars. We will hand out leaflets to them. Mr. Lau Kwok Fan, thank you. Many of our views been incorporated into the 2025 policy address. The Northern Metropolis is going to offer a large amount of public rental housing units. As the metropolis is industry driven, so I think that we should adjust the private public housing ratio. Now, the administration said that they will also adjust the PRH to SSF ratio. I think that is right for our development. I'd like to also talk about Tenants Purchase Scheme, TPS. Before and after the delivery of policy address, many people told us that they wanted to purchase their own PRH unit. There are many schemes to combat abuse of PRH, and there is a well of tenants policies under the government. If tenants are allowed to purchase their own PRH unit, then I think that we can achieve a win-win situation. In 2019 policy address, it was proposed that the unsold units under the previous PPS should be able to be sold on the secondary market. But there is a type of estate where there are tenants that are still renting the PRH units, and there are also tenants who have purchased their own PRH unit. Say, for example, Yongxing Estate in Fanlin. That's another type of TPS estate. There may be 3 blocks, one block where all the units are sold, and the other 2 blocks were all PRH units for rent. The government back then said that the remaining 2 blocks will also be sold to the tenants, like subsidized sale flat. But I proposed back then that we should deal with these TPS estates where there is a mix of rental units and units where the tenants have purchased. So what is the positioning of these TPS estates? Should we not work on it or work on them first? Because there is already in owner corporations at those estates. I think that we should trial another round of TPS at these estates first. Regarding your study in 2026, We will work with the Housing Bureau to persuade or collect views from stakeholders. Thank you. Secretary. Thank you. Let me talk about a ratio between public and private housing ratio. The ratio is still 70-30. At appropriate locations, we may adjust the ratio. We may not blindly apply this 70-30 ratio across the board. I think that the Development Bureau has explained this on some other occasions. It's true that there are still 30,000 units that has not been sold under the previous TPS. Some of these units been resumed by us because maybe the owners or the tenants have passed away. And after we resume these units, they are sold in the green farm and white farm market. We resume about 2,300, 2,400 of such units. The member talked about the TPS estates, where there is a mix of units for sale and for rent. We will look into the situation to see how we can process these units. Thank you. Mr. Tony Che. Thank you, Chairman. I thank the government and especially the Housing Bureau for their efforts over the past 3 years. It seems that now we have addressed the issue of backloaded public housing supply. I think that now it's time for the Housing Bureau to look into the future housing policy. I think that maybe we can increase the SSF supply. But how can we differentiate between SSF and private residential properties in terms of their positioning in the market? I think that these different types of housing should target people with different income. I think that it's time for us to now try to increase the living space of our people. Second, along with other members, I'm concerned about the quality and quantity of public housing. Now, in terms of quality, I hope that the administration will step up monitoring. I think that the Housing Bureau should play a more proactive role in this. They should make use of technology to ensure that our public housing is of a certain level of quality. For subsidized sale flats, well, people have high expectations for private residential properties. So it seems that the SSF cannot compare. Of course, I support the no-frills design, but I think that there is still room for us to improve the quality of SSF. Owners of SSF enjoy a discount, but still they pay a large sum of money to purchase their flat. So I think that the quality of public housing for rent and SSF should be different. Third, many private developments are dilapidated. For public housing, we have a timetable for repair maintenance. But as I said, Housing Bureau is not just responsible for overseeing public housing. I think that the Bureau should work with the HYAB and the Development Bureau to make sure that there is proper repair and maintenance among private residential developments. For buildings aged over 50 years old, we are seeing more and more of them. So how can different government departments and bureaux work together to maintain these buildings? For public housing, the Policy Bureau make use of smart estate management technology. Will the Bureau extend the use of this technology in private residential market? Thank you. I think your time is up.
少少時間。
Well, you have already used up your time. I will ask the secretary to answer your questions. Thank you. Now, we have already reversed the trend of the backloaded situation. For the housing ladder, we can think about subsidized housing, design, supply, and so on. Comparing with private housing, the layout of public housing is really simple. We adopt a no-frills design. That is because after tenants have moved in, they will touch up the units and conduct renovations. Say they will carry out renovation work regarding floors and so on. So how can we strike a balance? We need to do our bid well first, but we also need to let tenants do what they want to do to their units. Regarding aging buildings, this is close to the heart of the Development Bureau and the Buildings Department. The Basic Housing Units Bill has just been passed. There are subdivided units, and we request these units to meet certain requirements. There will be certain touch-ups to be done. There will also be basic renovation to be done. Regarding smart estate management, this is being piloted in as many as 10 housing estates. We pilot different projects in these 10 housing estates. When they are effective, we will incorporate them into the future maintenance contracts, or this will be implemented widely in housing estates across the territory. We don't just pilot these projects in 10 housing estates. We'll gauge the effectiveness and the cost effectiveness. If the result is good, we are going to add it to new contracts in order to expand the functions, and we want to encourage the private sector to use technologies as well. Thank you. Next member, Mr. Ren Kong. According to the Federation of Public Housing, 30% and about 60% of the people surveyed consider 2 rooms and 3 rooms to be suitable units for subsidized flats. For HOS flats and GSH flats, in 2024, the number of 2-room units, that is about 442 square feet and 510 feet, accounted for less than 30%. I'd like to ask the Secretary, in the future, when we have sufficient resources, will we increase the size of flats? Regarding the flat for flat scheme for elderly owners, it is indeed a good scheme in my opinion. But what do you mean by in a more remote area? Hong Kong is actually quite a small city. So how do you define a more remote area? Regarding the well-being startup program, I support you, Secretary. I visited all the shopping malls with the well-being startup program. The rabbit earrings I'm wearing today are also sold by young people joining the well-being startup program. This program is very much well received. We can see the merits of this scheme. Are you going to consider expanding the scope of beneficiaries, say for NGOs, if they help young people or women to start their own business? If they have good ideas, are you going to expand the scope to cover these beneficiaries as well? A lot of people want to join this scheme as well. Are you going to expand the scope? Next question is about the ratio of people with home ownership. The figure stands at about 50% or so. For the ratio in Asia, Hong Kong is actually on the low side. Well, Secretary, you work very hard on enriching the housing ladder. It is very good for you to advocate upward mobility. In the policy address, do you have any goals in relation to the housing policy to increase the ratio of Hong Kong people owning their own home? Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for supporting the Wellbeing Startup Program. You have the rabbit earrings and I have mine. It's about the star fruit. Well, young people have good craftsmanship. This program has been launched for 1 year. I'm going to review it with my colleagues. I'm happy to see the win-win situation. Is there further room to expand the program? Thank you, Mr. Rincon, for your encouragement. We'll continue to work on it. Regarding the flat for flat scheme for elderly owners, what do we mean by in a more remote area? Well, for urban, extended urban, new territories and islands, if you move from urban area to extended urban area, that is a case of moving to a more remote area. This is a very clear guideline. For 2-room and 3-room units in 2024, the figure accounted for 20%. To date, the figure has gone up to 25 to 27%. Our direction is that we're moving towards the provision of larger units, but we still have to take into account land supply and housing supply. For asset ratio, over 50% of people own their own home. Regarding the housing ladder, it depends very much on the general environment and the demand of members of the public in Hong Kong. Our general direction is that we support upward mobility. When the supply of public housing or the CWT it's a dropping, when we have confidence, then we can further work on it. Thank you. Next, my turn. I have 2 concerns. One on redevelopment, that is the redevelopment of older estates. I'm glad to see that the administration has listed the individual estates to be redeveloped, especially model housing estate. It is the oldest housing estate. Just last week, I had a meeting with residents in model housing estate. I couldn't have guessed a lot of people living in the estate came to this meeting. The open space of the meeting was packed full of people. People there were asking for redevelopment as soon as possible. In an old housing estate, there could be a lot of different problems, say burst pipes, lifts out of order, as well as the peeling off of concrete. A lot of the units in older housing estates are beyond repair. That's why during typhoon, there is concrete spalling in these units. That's why I urged the administration to double down on your efforts to redevelop older housing estates. Based on our experience, it takes at least 3 to 5 years to redevelop a housing estate. It may take as long as 10 years, but when the conditions of the units in the older housing estates is already subpar, how can the residents be expected to put up with the situation? Next, on demand for owning their own home. This is the expectation of people in Hong Kong. That's why some members refer to the TPS regarding the government's strategies. Do you want to provide public housing estates to members of the public, or do you want to focus on the TPS? The government needs to make it clear. For housing estates whose value has been depreciating, or when you sell older flats to members of the public, this is actually not good value for money. It is not very cost effective for the government as well. That is because you have fewer units. When you have HOS flats for people living in public rental housing estates, then the units in the public rental housing could be vacated. So I'd like the administration to clarify your strategies. Secretary, thank you for referring to the model housing estate. We'll continue with our redevelopment projects. Today we have the Deputy Director of Housing with us. They will keep a close eye on the situation. I will ask them to follow up on issues such as burst pipes. Before redevelopment takes place, we will ensure members can continue to live in the estate with peace of mind. We have already heard your opinion, Chairman. We'll continue to monitor the situation and pay closer attention to the issues you raised. Thank you. Mr. Vincent Chang, I'd like to ask about basic housing units. The Basic Housing Units Bill was passed thanks to the efforts of the administration. I thank you all for your efforts. This bill will come into operation on the 1st of March 2026. That is about 5 months away. I'd like to know how you are going to prepare for the implementation of the bill. For tenancy control of subdivided flats, there was a dedicated team responsible for that. What about the Basic Housing Units Bill? Will there be a dedicated team? Well, will some people lose their own home because of the Basic Housing Units Bill? If I understand the situation correctly, there are a total of 6 district services responsible for approval. There are some criteria such as being impacted on or termination of the tenancy. Are these 6 teams of the district service all prepared? Well, it is said that there's a lack of standard when it comes to the cost of touching up in relation to basic housing units. Do you have any standards to share with us? How do you estimate the costs? Do you have any updates for us? Secretary, thank you, Mr. Chang. Looking ahead, we have a lot of work to do. We are going to launch a website. Within October, we won't launch it. Afterwards, we are going to promote the website and to promote the scheme. We need help of district councillors. Tenants and owners are very important targets as well. We're going to distribute a simple form for them to register. We will also be mounting publicity programs through different channels, say radio stations, TV stations, promotional clips, and so on. We're going to prepare a sample unit as well. What is the requirement? Any requirements about the toilet? What other requirements will be in place? We are laying the groundwork for the requirements, and I will ask Ms. Wong to tell you about the services provided by the 6 teams. Thank you.
6支
Thank you. The 6 district service teams are ready. The ordinance was gazetted on the 3rd of October. And the application for Type C has started. Potential applicants can verify their eligibility with the district service teams. And after their eligibility has been verified, these Category C tenants can apply for transitional housing, and their applications will then be passed on to the relevant operators for consideration. Some subdivided units, the owners may be starting their renovation very soon, and they may be ending their tenancy with the tenants. And once the tenants have obtained the confirmation of their tenancy having ended with the landlords, then they can apply for transitional housing. Mr. Holden Chow, thank you. I'm glad to see that the composite waiting time for public rental housing has shortened very significantly. I have 3 questions. First, rather than a question, it's a comment. Many members talked about TPS, the Tenants Purchase Scheme. Many people wanted to see the TPS being relaunched. I think that the government should start consulting the public on the scheme. That's my comment. Second, this is a question. Regarding the flat scheme for elderly owners, I think that the intention is good. This is such that the elderly owners can vacate their units in urban area for young people. From the perspective of elderly owners, they may not be willing to move to a smaller flat or move to a more remote area. They may have to think about whether the cash incentives is enough to offset the challenges that they may be facing moving into a smaller flat or one in a more remote area. Some owners may want to join the scheme, some may not. So I think that we should continue to keep in view the application numbers to see if the scheme should be extended. Third, there is a light public housing projects in Two Moon where construction bolts were being cut, and I know that the administration has conducted an investigation and you've just published a press release. It seems that there is no further problems, and the administration undertake that they will proceed with the projects on schedule. Safety is essential in public housing projects. As this has happened, please look into any further issues that we have. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary. Thank you for your comment on TPS. We are going to conduct a study on it very soon. As for the flat scheme for elderly owners, same goes for other flat schemes. People apply for it because they want to move into a larger flat. Some want to realize their assets because they have some other purposes for their money. Some developers are very helpful in assisting these owners to move to another flat in some other areas. Some subsidized sale flats are located in some mature units or mature districts. For SSF owners living in urban area, if they move to one in extended urban area, then they can realize some cash by selling their flat in the urban area and purchase one of a lower price in the extended urban area. As mentioned, we are going to conduct some briefing sessions for potential applicants of the flat for flat scheme. Regarding the LPH project, the Able Chunwo joint venture, they are now working on 3 different projects, one in Tumun Area 54, one in Chaiwan, and one in Siulam. Regarding this case, the Architectural Services Department has conducted a proactive investigation against cutting of construction bolts. These problems can be rectified, and an investigation team has been set up to report to me and the Development Bureau. If construction supervision is involved, then the Development Bureau will be responsible. I undertake that the LPH or any other public housing projects will be completed safely. Chaiwan project is near the sea. The Siulam project is also next to the ocean. After the super typhoon a few weeks ago, these buildings of 10 odd stories did not see any problems. There was no water leakage at all among the MIC modules. Thank you. Mr. Paul Chair. Thank you, Chairman. I don't think I have to repeat the success of these terms of the government in improving the housing situation in Hong Kong. We have the Project Facilitation Office. Given the fiscal deficit of the government, I think that the government should save costs in many different areas. So how much cost can be saved given the Project Facilitation Office? You are going to procure MIC modules centrally. So is that like centralized kitchen? Will this save us cost and improve efficiency? I know that you are going to use more and more mics, MIC. We have used it for the electrical complex as well. But some industry players told us that mic may speed up construction of buildings, but cost of repair and maintenance is high. I'd also like to ask about the flat for flat scheme for elderly owners. I fully support it. As we have an aging population, elderly people enjoy discount and public transport. They now like to go to the mainland for grocery shopping. I think that some of them may be willing to move to remote areas in the north. In recent years, I've been advocating for Hong Kong MC Retire 3. I think that the administration should promote all these measures and policies. Maybe we can establish an elderly stock exchange on the internet for housing. Secretary, thank you. After building public housing for so many years, we now no longer try to fix things here and there. We try to adopt a more holistic and broader approach in improving procedures, in streamlining them. I thank the Housing Bureau for setting up the Project Facilitation Office. The CEDB is a great partner of ours. Previously, they hand the land over to us after the site is formed. Now, at the level of director or deputy director, there will be closer communication. Now, if the CEDB see two different sites for public housing projects together, then we can use 45-degree open cut. We don't have to put in place panels separating the two sites just because they are two different projects. We're able to save $240 million just because we make use of this streamlined approach. Sometimes CEDB, the Housing Buildings Department, and the Housing Department work together. In the Northern Metropolis, there will be many construction sites for public housing. There are metasedimentary rocks underground. The Buildings Department estimate that the loading will be 3,000 kPa. But CEDB found out that 5,000 will do. So compared to 3,000, that can save us some 30% of cost. Because of this estimates, we can save on materials, we can save on time. Because we don't have to use pillars or foundations as thick. We can save approximately $1.4 billion just by adopting the lighter KPA figures. The CEDB has conducted research on sedimental rocks. I must stress that by relaxing the threshold to 5,000 kPa, the project is still safe. We have not reached the ceiling. By relaxing the safety coefficient, we can save a lot of money. It doesn't mean that a project is not safe anymore. For MIC, we use cement. For light public housing units, they are rather, well, their lifespan may be shorter. That's why we make use of steel instead of cement. For housing authority, we make use of cement because it's easier for us to repair and maintain. It's not any much different from traditional public rental housing. For steel MIC, because the turnover of tenants is high, therefore, in 5 years' time, we may have to unscrew the bolts to see if there is any instability. We do have to go for or conduct random inspections for steel MICs in light public housing. For traditional public housing, we should not use steel because for steel MIC, we need to go for random and regular inspections. That's why we opt for cement MIC for traditional public rental housing. For light public housing, we use steel MIC because the turnover is high, and it's easier for us to conduct regular inspections inside the flats. On the publicity and promotion of Plat for Flat scheme, thank you for your support. I've been working with my colleagues to see how we can make this scheme more effective. Thank you.
我哋所有議員
Thank you. All members who have pressed the button to request to speak have already spoken. We have one member pressing the button for the second round. I will ask Dr. Wendy Hong to speak, and then our meeting will come to an end. Thank you, Chairman. Regarding the TPS, I'd like to add one point, but you don't have to reply to me. I'm not against the TPS, but time is not ripe for us to relaunch the TPS. There are two conditions we need to meet. One, when we no longer need to construct public housing, meaning we have sufficient supply, and when the circulation rate of public housing is already very high, meaning a plunge in the waiting time for public housing. When these conditions have been met, it is time for us to launch the TPS again. But now, members of the public are waiting for a long time to wait for public housing. But on the other hand, if you are going to relaunch the TPS, members of the public will have to wait for a long time before they can have a home in the public housing estate. Well, I think you should have interviewed the sandwich class as well. You shouldn't just interview the public housing tenants. If you compare public rental housing tenants and the sandwich class, well, I think you have to take care of both groups of people. Just now you talked about increasing the ratio of Hong Kong people owning their own home. You should do so through private housing, GSH flats and HOS flats. Public rental housing units are public resources. One unit sold, one fewer unit. In other words, the relaunch of the TPS is only suitable when you no longer need to construct public housing. For TPS estates, the units are as old as 3 decades. So how are you going to take back the units from tenants? If you don't think these problems through, then there will be a lot of problems in the future. Well, Secretary, any reply? Thank you, Dr. Wendy Hong, for your opinions. These are of great reference for us. Well, how can we make sure the relaunch of the TPS will be successful? I believe it is important for us to do so at a suitable time. Thank you. That wraps up our agenda item. Agenda item number 3, any other business? This panel meeting is the last meeting of our current legislative session. I have to thank the administration and all panel members for your active participation in our meetings. This panel will report our work to the council meeting of the 15th of October. The draft of the work report has been circulated to members for your reference. Once again, I thank members for your active participation in our panel and also thank the administration for joining us in our meetings. Any more business? If no, meeting adjourned. Thank you.